Some are protected in the dark, while others become it. Only those who carry light within will make it out alive. In the Shadows, an original short story. Candice ambled over the dry bones of the suburban street. The houses slept at either side, not a light in their glazed eyes to brighten the desolation of the midnight hour she crept through. She stared into the distance, decompressing into the quiet from a shift full of loud music and demanding customers. A chill ran down her spine as the icy fingers of changing seasons traced little slivers of ice over her skin. Her teeth chattered as a shiver raced from crown to toe. She stopped under a dim streetlight to pull her phone from her pocket and switch on the podcast she'd begun listening to before her shift.
According to the National Missing and Unidentified Persons NAM-US database, which is funded by the U.S. Department of Justice, more than 600,000 persons of all ages go missing every year, and approximately 4,400 unidentified bodies are recovered each year.
The deep voice interrupted her thoughts. She stuffed the device back into place and gratefully allowed herself to be swept into the narrative it relayed. Anything was better than rehashing the cringy bar scene she left behind.
Marcia never expected to be listed among them, but who among them ever does?
Candice rolled her eyes at the cheesy foretelling. Her earbuds switched to noise canceling, effectively blocking the sound of dead leaves tumbling over the pavement as a frigid gust closed in around her. She wiped a fleecy glove over her numb nose to collect the building moisture at its reddened tip. A streetlight just up the drive flickered, bringing her attention back to the present. Oak Haven Drive, the street sign boasted. I haven't been down that road for quite a while. Candice glanced both ways at the crossroad. She looked past it to Peaceful Grove Boulevard, suddenly craving a quiet walk through the small forest connecting the three neighborhoods surrounding her own. A walk through the park wouldn't be the worst way to wind down, would it? She followed the whim and turned to the right. It wasn't like she'd be able to fall asleep right now anyway. Even if she wanted to, her mind was running a mile a minute still. It had been a long shift. A long weekend of shifts, if she was honest. Even the enticing storyline pouring into her ears couldn't pull her away from the events for long. She reflected on them above the droning voice, retelling Marcia's fatal mishandlings leading to her disappearance. Outside of her awareness, a lone car slid through the dim streetlights along the street she'd just left behind her. Its brake lights shuddered as it passed, before it continued slowly on its way. Candice didn't seem to notice. She shoved her hands deeper into her jacket pockets, balling them around whatever warmth she could collect. Jack, I told you I wasn't going to serve that guy. He came in all of last week, too. An echo of the heated exchange with her shift lead surfaced as she strolled along the otherwise dead street. Candice, he comes here all the time, and he requested your section specifically. You should take it as a compliment. And I'm pretty sure he's a good tipper. Fine. He can sit there, but Miles already offered to switch tables with me and take him.
Candice, he's a great tipper. Let me reiterate that.
Yeah, and an even better creeper. I'm not taking that table, Jack. That's it. He's on my short list of absolutely will not. And I'm not changing my mind. The only reason he ever comes here is to wait for the strip clubs to open. He's absolutely gross. You try serving him. Or at least just watch him. Jack hadn't been happy, but it was a full house and he didn't have time to argue the point. Candice shook her head. She watched a rock skip silently off her sneaker. It bounced erratically out in front of her before coming to a standstill at the edge of the curb. She glanced up to watch the silhouette of lofty pine trees looming into dark giants.
Once again proving, if her family had alerted the authorities any sooner, there might have been hope of finding her alive.
Candice rolled her eyes. Yeah, blame the family. That's great. Who writes these things? Her lip lifted into a snarl.
But how could they have known? According to their testimonies and text conversations, she hadn't mentioned her struggles at all.
Candice nodded along. That's better, she thought absently.
The same can't be said of her place of employment. Miss Hampercamper had complained about the man who eventually kidnapped, raped, and killed her more than once, which begs the question, why was nothing done to keep the stalker from entering the establishment she worked for?
Again, Candice thought of the customers she'd dealt with. It was the end of tourist season, yes, but it was turning into an annual joke between she and the other bartenders that this time of year seemed to bring the cockroaches out of the woodworks. Creeps who seemed almost desperate to find something before going into hibernation for the winter season. Candice chuckled bitterly, stopping at the edge of the tree line looming in front of her. The black trunks seemed to block all light from passing through them. Candice pulled out her phone. 12:12 a.m. A sigh slipped through her lips, sending a wisp of steam to swirl into the deep autumn air. She looked at the sidewalk extending to either side behind the rows of houses, and then back at the one swallowed by the towering pines and aspens. The latter leapt out toward her. They swayed and danced like slender ghosts in the low light. Instead of finding it eerie, Candice felt a sense of peace. They swayed and danced like slender ghosts in the low light. Instead of finding it eerie, Candice felt a sense of peace. She paused the audio and tapped her left earbud to dismiss the noise-canceling feature. The leaves shuddering in the wind sounded like falling water, or a river hidden within the thick insides of the forest. She took a deep breath, smiling as a friendly face appeared through her memories. The scene standing before her reminded her of 1,000 night hikes with her father and close friends back home. She suddenly missed them terribly and decided on the spot to call each of them in the morning. Candice stepped onto the sidewalk, letting her eyes adjust to the darkness. Her gut summoned her forward. A sense of urgency took hold as she mapped the route in her mind. She knew from previous trail runs that the path extending in front of her came out just behind her neighborhood. She stood at the entrance until her eyes adjusted to the darkness. With a final glance down the empty road behind her, Candice disappeared into the thicket. Just as she took the leap, a vehicle with its lights off turned down the street she'd left in her wake. It crept slowly up the river of concrete to the mouth of the sidewalk leading through the pocket of trees, where the car stopped. The purr of the engine quit. Not long after, a shadow poured from the open door, closing it softly behind. The cloaked figure disappeared into the bushes after Candice. The morning came too quickly. The sun struck a pose through the open curtains and shot straight into Candice's face. She groaned. Not quite ready to accept it, she rolled away and covered her face in blankets. 10 more minutes. 10 more minutes. Hey, Pops. I tried calling you Sunday.
Hey, kiddo. Yeah, sorry I meant to call you back sooner, but the week kinda got away from me. How's it going over there?
Good. It was a long weekend. This week has been a little slow so far, but I have today off finally, so that's nice.
Oh yeah? Sorry about your weekend. Rowdy customers giving you a hard time? Need your old man to come throw some elbows, put him in their place?
Candice laughed. No, it's all right. There was one in particular that had me a little edgy over the weekend. I didn't like the vibe I got from him. Kind of serial killery, but wasn't anything I couldn't handle.
That's my girl. Don't give guys like that an inch. Have you told anyone you work with? Is he handsy, or has he said anything that you could get him 86 permanently for?
Well, nothing outright, but the first 2 times he came in, he kept trying to get me to come out to his car with him. Offered me a ride home, even asked me if I'd smoked weed, and if I wanted to meet up after work and smoke with him.
See? That's why your mother and I taught you the age-old saying, don't take candy from strangers.
Yeah, well, it worked, 'cause I didn't, but then the last time he came in, he pretty much demanded it. He said he'd asked and been polite and that I was being rude denying his offer so many times. So weird how angry he got.
Did you take that to management? That seems like a good enough reason to kick the guy out.
Candice could hear his inner father coming out across the phone. Yeah, I talked to Jack, and he basically wanted to have me fired after I refused to take his table.
Wait, Jack did?
No, the guy wouldn't serve.
Well, did Jack deal with him? Tell him off for you? That's basically his job.
No, actually, he was pretty upset with me for making a busy night more difficult, but I stuck to my guns. The guy was a total creep, and I got the idea that if I was even so much as nice to him, he might take it the wrong way.
Oh, Jack. Now that you mention it, you've told me about that guy before. He's kind of a dipstick, huh? Good for you, though, honey. Way to use your brain.
Yeah, no kidding. Dipstick for sure. A few of my coworkers complained about the guy too, so who knows what happened, but I haven't seen him since.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, so I guess the situation kind of resolved itself. Also, the reason I called on Sunday, I was going to tell you. I needed to blow off some steam on my way home Saturday night. I was a little fired up by the time I left, but it gave me a reason to check out the little wooded area behind my house on my way home. It's totally different at night.
Oh, come on, Candy. You just got done telling me you have a potential stalker on your hands, and you go and do something like that?
He chuckled, but Candice could hear the exasperation in his voice as she pictured him shaking his head at her through the phone.
I wish you wouldn't do that out there. It's different than adventuring out here. You know the area, you have people you can go with. Please tell me you at least took someone with you.
Nope, I flew it solo, and I lived to tell you all about it, but it made me miss you, Dad.
I miss you too, you little bonehead. Promise me you won't do that again.
All right, fine. I won't go out by myself next time, Candice bargained.
I'll take what I can get. I'm gonna have to get you one of those bulldogs or something.
Candice laughed. I don't think a bulldog is gonna scare anyone. Do you mean a pit bull? I'd take one of those, for sure.
Yeah, sure. Whatever would put a robber or a stalker in their place. Maybe I can hire somebody to train a bear or something. I can't believe you did that, though, kiddo. You're smarter than that. It's a big city out there. Your mom and I are halfway across the country. We can't protect you. You have to do our job for us and take extra good care of yourself now.
Candice could hear his concern. Sorry, Dad. I didn't want to worry you. I was just missing home and it felt like a little slice, but I'm safe. I'm good.
All right. Maybe I'm just a little uptight. You got your mom on those true crime podcasts. Maybe I'm seeing a little bit of crazy around every corner. That stuff sticks to your brain. There's some real weirdos out there.
Yeah, no kidding. Crazy to think you never know who's who these days. Ranger Dillon had checked the parking round at the mouth of the city park 2 days running. He was a little annoyed that his supervisor had gotten on his case about not handling the Honda situation, but overall he understood. A job's a job, and sometimes people have to learn to maintain their stuff the hard way. It wasn't cool to leave a vehicle where there's clearly posted signs boasting no parking, especially in areas with large numbers of children and families. Parents are bound to get a little bit suspicious. He understood. The ranger generally tried to be considerate. If cars parked overnight, he liked to leave a little leeway in case local kids were out for a lark and ended up carpooling for safety reasons. It hadn't been that long since he was one of them. But this vehicle had been called in 3 times in the last hour as suspicious or overstaying its welcome. It was time to tag it for towing. The park ranger pulled up next to the relatively new Honda Accord, parked outside the Woodland Park under his jurisdiction. Kshht! Hey, Johnson, I just pulled up. The car's still here. I'm going to go ahead and slap a sticker on it now. Do you want me to go ahead and search the main route through, just to make sure there isn't anyone that got themselves tangled up or injured?
Kshht. Kshht. Yeah, why don't you? It's probably nothing, but it'd be good to check all the boxes in case anything comes up. Then you got all your bases covered. Kshht. Kshht.
Alright, sounds good. I'll call it in as soon as I've looked around the place.
Kshht. Kshht. Sounds good, Dylan. Talk soon. Kshht. Kshht.
Roger.
Kshht. Kshht. I hate it when you say that. Kshht.
I know.
Kshht.
The ranger's smile widened. He tagged the vehicle and started for the woodland entrance, disappearing into the chilled morning air under the shadow of the heavy canopy. Not half an hour later, Ranger Dillon flew from the mouth of the woods, as if it had spit him out. He launched for the radio and hit the button, breathing heavily into the speaker.
Kshht.
Johnson, are you there?
Kshht.
He pulled away, heaving and lurching forward as if he might throw up. His face was drained of all color, and his palms were drenched in sweat.
Kshht. Hey, Dylan, is everything all right over there? It sounds like you've been running from a bear. Kshht.
The man on the other end of the radio chuckled as it cut out.
Kshht.
Call in a deputy, sir. We've got a situation.
Kshht.
He suddenly regretted tagging the vehicle, as if it had been an act violating the deceased man he'd stumbled over.
Kshht. Hold on. What happened in there? Kshht. Kshht.
Sir, there's a dead guy. Probably early to mid-30s. I can't quite figure out what I was looking at. Looked like he had pantyhose over his face or something.
Kshht.
The ranger's voice shuddered as he recalled the scene. His cheeks puffed up again as if he might puke.
Kshht.
Ugh. It's been cold the last 2 days. That's when I first noticed the vehicle there. It was 2 days ago, sir. I didn't do anything about it because I was sure it was nothing, but... He pulled away and wrenched violently. But the smell when you get up close is something awful.
Kshht. Kshht. All right. Susan's calling it in now, boy. Just calm down if you can. Try to breathe. Kshht.
The radio went dead for a moment.
Kshht. All right, Dylan. Tom, listen up. I need you to calm down, all right? The deputies are being dispatched shortly, and they're going to need a statement from you. They'll probably ask you about the timeline and any other details you might have collected. don't go back in there until they get there. Can you keep your eye on the trail? Make sure no civilians head down that way? Kst.
Tom gulped in air. The image of the shish-kebabbed, bloated figure plunged through by a sharp branch plagued his mind. Oh. Okay. He wheezed before clenching down on the button once more. Kst. Yeah, all right. Okay, I can do... He turned away, gagging again before continuing. Ugh. All right, I can do that. Kst. Kst.
Good. Kst.
His supervisor offered softly.
Kst. Hey, you did good. Be glad you're the one that found it first, Dylan. Not some local kid, yeah? Kst.
Tom nodded. Strangely, the statement eased his mind.
Kst.
Man, I've never seen anything like it. Not even in horror movies, Johnson.
Kst.
The words came out childlike. He brushed the cold sweat from his brow.
Kst. I know, Tom. You did good. We'll talk more once the deputies get there. Do you want me to head on over, or you gonna be okay? Kst. Kst.
No, I think I'm fine. I'm just a little shook up. I was not expecting to see that.
Kst.
Tom stood guard at the entrance of the wooded area until the sheriffs arrived shortly after. Residents of the neighborhood started to trickle curiously from their homes, drawn in by the flashing police lights, each doing their best to catch wind of any detail they might share among themselves. The detective leading the investigation took Tom's testimony of all that he'd witnessed before he led them into the bowels of the forest. Their reaction was muted compared to his own, but the imagery was haunting. The man had been skewered through by a rogue bough in what appeared to be a tragic accident. Upon further investigation, what they found only deepened the mystery. The man was indeed wearing a nylon sock over his face, which had caused permanent deformation. As the corpse had grown cold and rigor mortis had set in, the expression of horror on his face had been immortalized. He was wearing a black backpack, and all of his clothing and his cap had matched, as if he were trying to blend in with the shadows naturally cast by the woods surrounding his corpse. Upon opening his backpack and searching for identification, they found more than they'd bargained for. There was a gun, 2 rolls of duct tape, and a large hunting knife that didn't appear to have been used. Along with his identification, they found a receipt from Happy-Go-Lucky's, cashed out by a Candice from 3 nights before. Happy-Go-Lucky's was a popular bar just beyond the neighborhood. While searching his car, they found the trunk lined with a brand new, still creased from the packaging tarp, laid neatly out as if to capture whatever he'd planned to toss in. The back seat was lined in garbage bags. Before the detective took off, Tom stopped him. "Sir, what do you make of it all?" Only time will tell, son. But from the looks of it, this character was on his way to do no good." Tom nodded. He'd thought the same thing. Suddenly he felt less bad about taking the vehicle after all. Moral of the story: fear is a fatal defense mechanism. Never let it lead the way. Be courageous, and your contenders will fall on their own sword.